The grand halls of the alien palace shined with silver lights. The ceiling was carved with glowing crystals, and soldiers stood tall on both sides of the long golden carpet. At the end of the hall sat Princess Saria, daughter of the High King of the Veari Empire. Her eyes were sharp, her chin lifted high, and her heart full of pride. She looked down at her council members. They were speaking of humans again. Always humans. To Saria, this subject was nothing more than a waste of time. Humans are weak, she said in a calm but commanding voice. They are fragile creatures. Their bodies are soft, their weapons are outdated, and their spirit, it is broken. Why should we fear them? One of the older counselors, a wise alien with skin like stone, cleared his throat. Your Highness, do not underestimate them. They fight with courage even when the odds are against them. Saria raised her brow and laughed lightly. Courage? Is that what you call it? I call it desperation, like insects trying to bite before being crushed. Her words echoed through the hall. The guards shifted uncomfortably, but none dared to speak against her. She was the princess, after all. To her, the Veari Empire was the strongest race in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaved many species, and stood undefeated in war. Humans were nothing more than a small nuisance. But outside the palace walls, things were changing. The war with humanity had begun only months ago. At first, the Veari generals promised a quick and easy victory. They believed humans would bow down, surrender their planets, and beg for mercy. But reports kept coming, one after another. Humans were fighting harder than expected. Even now, a great battle was being prepared on the distant world of Arcanis. Human fleets had gathered, and the Veari army was ready to crush them. For the princess, this was an opportunity. She wanted to see for herself the weakness of mankind. In her private chambers, she stood before the mirror. Her armor was light but elegant, shining with blue light. She touched the crown on her forehead, a symbol of her royal blood. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow I will show them. I will prove to my people that humans are nothing." That night, she walked to the royal balcony. From there, the sky of her homeworld stretched wide, filled with stars. Her eyes fell on the faint glow of the human colony worlds far away. She imagined them burning, their cities falling, their people kneeling. The thought brought a smile to her face. But somewhere deep inside, a small shadow of doubt touched her mind. She remembered the counselor's words. Do not underestimate them. She shook her head quickly, brushing the thought away. The next morning, the palace was alive with activity. Ships were being prepared for war. Soldiers marched in perfect lines, their armor polished, their weapons ready. The banners of the Veari Empire waved proudly in the cold wind. As Princess Saria stepped onto the landing platform, everyone bowed. The air was filled with respect, fear, and loyalty. She moved gracefully toward her royal cruiser. Your Highness, the captain said, bowing deeply. The fleet is ready. We await your command, Saria nodded. Take me to the battlefield. I wish to see with my own eyes how quickly the humans break. The fleet launched into the sky. Dozens of warships, their engines burning bright, cut through the darkness of space. The hum of power filled the air, and the soldiers chanted songs of victory. From the main deck of her cruiser, Saria watched as the stars blurred into lines. They were heading straight toward Arcanis. Her heart swelled with pride. To her, this was not a risk. It was destiny. But the closer they came, the more uneasy the generals grew. The humans were not retreating. Their ship stood firm, waiting, prepared to fight. Strange, one officer muttered. I expected them to run, Saria smirked. Let them wait. It will make their defeat more painful. Soon the battlefield came into view. Human ships, smaller, less advanced, formed a tight formation. Their weapons glowed faintly. Compared to the mighty Veari fleet, they looked like ants standing before giants. The princess raised her chin, her pride shining brighter than the stars. Prepare for victory, she said. This will not take long. But far away on one of those human ships, a soldier stood ready. His armor was scratched, his hands scarred, but his eyes burned with fire. He did not know the princess was watching. He did not know fate was about to tie their paths together. All he knew was this. No matter what came, he would fight to protect his people. And soon, he would shock the princess in a way she could never imagine. The stars outside burned like cold fire as the Veari fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The massive alien ships spread across the sky, each one a floating fortress. Their black hulls shimmered with shields, their weapons ready to destroy everything in their path. Princess Saria stood at the front window of her royal cruiser. Her arms were crossed, her face calm but full of pride. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment to see humans fall. "Target their lead ship," she ordered without hesitation. "Crush them quickly and let the galaxy see how weak these humans truly are." The Vayari gunners obeyed. Energy beams roared across the darkness, glowing blue and white. The first human ship shook under the attack, fire bursting from its side. Syria smiled. It looked like victory was already in her grasp. But then something unexpected happened. The humans did not retreat. They did not scatter. Instead, their formation tightened, as if every small ship knew exactly what to do. They moved like a single living creature, each one covering the other. Their weapons fired back, not as powerful as the Vayari cannons, but precise, sharp, and relentless. The deck beneath Syria's feet trembled slightly. A human missile had struck their shields. "Impossible," she muttered, narrowing her eyes. "How can they resist for this long?" The captain of her guard approached. His voice was firm but uneasy. "Your Highness, these humans—" "They fight with strategy. They don't care how small they are. Every move is to protect their comrades. They will not break easily." Syria brushed him off with a wave of her hand. "They are only delaying the inevitable. Soon their courage will turn into despair." Still, as she looked again at the battlefield, a strange feeling grew in her chest. The humans were fragile, yes, but there was fire in their defense. Every time a ship was struck, the others covered its retreat. Every time soldiers fell, more rose up to fight. Her gaze stopped on a single human vessel, a smaller cruiser moving faster than the rest. Its shields flickered, its hull dented from enemy fire, but it kept pushing forward. At the helm was a soldier, face scarred, eyes sharp, guiding his ship straight into danger. On the main screen, Syria saw him for just a second, through a grainy transmission. His uniform was dirty, his hands steady on the controls. He shouted orders to his crew with a voice full of fire. "Hold the line," he commanded. "Protect the fleet. No matter what, we do not fall today." Something inside the princess shifted. She had expected fear. She had expected to see trembling hands and desperate eyes. But this man looked unshaken, as if he carried the strength of 100 warriors inside him. The Vayari generals laughed. "Pathetic," one said. "Foolish humans," said another, but Syria could not laugh. For the first time she felt curiosity, and maybe even unease. Suddenly, alarms blared across her cruiser. "Enemy boarding craft incoming," shouted an officer. Small human ships had broken through the defenses. They were heading directly toward the princess's vessel. "How dare they?" Syria hissed. "Send the guards. Do not let them reach me." The corridors of the royal cruiser exploded with chaos. Human soldiers stormed inside, blasting doors and cutting through alien guards. They were smaller, less armored, but they moved with deadly precision. Every step forward was bought with sacrifice, and yet none of them turned back. From the safety of her command room, Syria watched the feeds with narrowed eyes. She saw the same scarred soldier among them, leading the charge. His rifle fired with perfect aim, his voice pushing his men forward even as many fell. Why did they fight like this? Why risk everything for a battle they could not win? The princess's pride told her to dismiss it. They are reckless. They will all die soon. But another voice whispered deep inside her, "This is not weakness. This is strength of another kind." As the fight raged closer, Syria made a choice that surprised even her generals. "Seal the throne chamber," she commanded. "If they wish to reach me, they must fight through every wall." Her eyes hardened. "And I will see for myself if this human dares to stand before me." The corridors echoed with gunfire. Human screams mixed with alien roars. Step by step, the humans drew closer to the princess's hall, and Syria waited, her pride burning. But her heart whispering that something unusual was about to happen. Somewhere beyond the smoke, the brave soldier pressed on, unaware that the fate of the princess and the beginning of a new story was now tied to his courage. The throne chamber of the royal cruiser glowed with cold silver light. Walls pulsed with energy fields designed to keep enemies out. Princess Syria sat tall on her throne, her hands resting on the sharp arms of the chair, her face calm but full of pride. She could hear the distant sounds of battle, the clash of weapons, the echo of explosions, the screams of both human and Vayari soldiers. The door shook under heavy blasts. Sparks flew across the floor. The humans were coming closer. Syria lifted her chin higher. "Let them come," she whispered. They will learn what happens when insects dare to touch royalty. But deep inside, her heart beat faster. Not fear, no, she told herself, never fear. It was anger, and something else she refused to name. The final blast tore the doors open. Smoke filled the chamber. Out of the haze, human soldiers rushed in, weapons raised. The Vayari guards fought back fiercely, blades against rifles, energy against fire. In the chaos, Syria's eyes locked on one figure. It was him, the scarred soldier she had seen before, the one who refused to break. His armor was damaged, his shoulder bleeding, yet he moved with unshaken strength. His voice cut through the noise. Hold the line. Protect each other. Every command pushed his men forward. Every step he took brought him closer to the princess. Syria stood from her throne, her sharp crown glinting in the light. So this is the human who thinks he can challenge me? She said, her voice dripping with arrogance. The soldier's eyes flicked to her just for a second. There was no fear in them, only determination. He did not answer. Instead, he kept fighting, covering his men, pulling down two guards with swift strikes. The battle raged. One by one, the humans fell. Explosions shook the chamber and smoke stung the air. Soon only a handful remained standing. And among them, the soldier still fought. But even his strength had limits. A blast from a Vayari guard struck his chest, sending him crashing to the floor. His weapon slid away, his breath heavy. For a moment, silence fell. The guards closed in on him. Syria stepped forward, her elegant boots clicking against the metal floor. She looked down at him as one would look at a fallen animal. So this is your great bravery? She said coldly. Crawling on the ground, defeated? The soldier coughed, lifting his head slowly. His voice was rough, but his words cut deep. Better to crawl for my people than to bow to tyrants like you. Syria froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had dared. Yet this broken, bleeding human looked her in the eyes as if she were no goddess at all, but simply another enemy to fight. Before she could respond, another explosion rocked the ship. A human boarding craft outside had detonated, shaking the cruiser to its core. Metal screamed and part of the ceiling collapsed. The chamber filled with falling debris. Syria stumbled, her prideful stance breaking for the first time. A massive steel beam tore free from above, crashing down toward her throne. For a split second, she expected to die. She was ready to be crushed under her own ship. But then, something shocking happened. The very soldier she had mocked, the human bleeding at her feet, moved with sudden strength. He threw himself forward, shoving Syria out of the way just as the beam crashed down. The ground shook, smoke rising from the wreckage. Syria landed hard, breathless. She looked up, stunned. The soldier had shielded her with his own body, taking the brunt of the collapse. His back was bleeding, his breath ragged, yet his arm still pushed against the fallen beam, keeping it from killing them both. Why? Syria whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. Why would you save me? I am your enemy. The soldier's face twisted in pain, but his eyes never wavered. Because life is worth saving, even yours. Those words struck her deeper than any weapon could. This man, whom she had called weak, had risked everything to protect her. The very princess who had sworn to see his kind destroyed. Guards rushed forward, pulling the beam away. They grabbed the soldier, binding his arms in glowing chains. He was now a prisoner, captured but unbroken. Syria rose slowly, her heart still racing. She stared at him as the guards dragged him away. The arrogance on her face cracked, replaced with something unfamiliar. Confusion, disbelief, and respect. No, she told herself it was impossible. He was just a human, and yet she could not shake the memory of his eyes or the feeling of his body shielding her from death. The hall was quiet again. Smoke lingered, ashes floated in the air, and the princess stood alone. Her pride was intact, but her certainty was shaken. For the first time in her life, Princess Syria did not know what to believe. The corridors of the royal cruiser echoed with heavy footsteps. Chains rattled as the captured human soldier was dragged by two tall Vayari guards. His armor was torn, his wounds raw, yet he walked with his head held high. His eyes still burned with the same fire that had shocked Princess Syria. From the throne chamber, Syria followed at a distance, her long cloak flowing behind her. Her face was calm, but inside her thoughts clashed like storm waves. She had seen him stand against impossible odds. She had felt him push her out of death's path, even when it would have been easier for him to let her die. Why? The soldier was locked inside a holding cell deep in the cruiser. Glowing barriers hummed, sealing him in. He sank onto the cold floor, breathing heavily but refusing to show weakness. One of the guards sneered. Pathetic creature. He should have let the beam crush you, Princess. Saving you will be his last mistake. Saria raised her hand, silencing the guard. Leave us. I will speak to him alone. The guards hesitated, then bowed and left. The chamber was silent except for the low hum of the barrier. Saria stepped closer, her eyes sharp as daggers. You could have killed me, she said. You could have let me die. Why didn't you? The soldier lifted his gaze, his face pale but unbroken. Because no life deserves to be thrown away. Not even the life of my enemy. Saria's lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to laugh, to mock him again, to call his words foolish. But the memory of his arms shielding her would not leave her mind. You think that makes you strong? She asked coldly. He met her eyes without flinching. It does. Strength is not about how many planets you conquer. It is about what you are willing to sacrifice for others. The words stung. Saria had grown up believing power meant domination, that ruling meant crushing the weak. But this human spoke with a certainty she could not ignore. Before she could answer, the ship shook violently. Alarms screamed through the corridors. The floor trembled beneath her feet. Report, she shouted, a voice cracked through the intercom. Princess! Human reinforcements have arrived. They are attacking the fleet. Saria's eyes widened. The battle was not over. Outside the cruiser, human ships were pushing harder than before, striking with surprising precision. Another blast rocked the vessel. The lights flickered, sparks flying from the ceiling. The soldier in the cell smirked. Looks like your empire is not as invincible as you thought. Saria glared at him, but she felt the unease in her chest grow stronger. The humans fought like fire, refusing to burn out. Suddenly, another explosion tore through the wall nearby. Smoke poured in and the floor cracked. The cruiser tilted sharply, sending Saria stumbling against the barrier of the cell. The soldier pressed forward, gripping the glowing field with his chained hands. You'll die if you stay here, he shouted. Saria's pride held her still. I am not afraid of death. The soldier shook his head. Then you're a fool. Fear is not weakness, it's survival. Let me out and I can get you to safety. She stared at him, torn. He was her enemy, a prisoner, a human she had sworn to despise. And yet, he had already proven his words with action. He had saved her once when he had no reason to. The ship jolted again. Flames licked through the cracks in the wall. The ceiling groaned, ready to collapse. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the control panel. For a long moment she hesitated. Then, with a swift motion, she deactivated the barrier. The soldier stumbled forward, blinking at his sudden freedom. Chains still bound his wrists, but he nodded to her. You made the right choice. Do not think this means I trust you, she snapped, hiding the crack in her voice. Fine, he said, his lips curving into the ghost of a smile. Just stay alive. The corridor filled with fire as another blast tore the cruiser apart. The soldier grabbed Saria's arm, pulling her through the smoke. Even with his hands chained, he moved with determination, shielding her body from falling debris. Guards rushed past them, shouting orders, but none dared to stop the princess. They watched in shock as she ran beside a chained human prisoner. Step by step, the two fought their way through collapsing halls. The ship groaned as if the void itself wanted to swallow it whole. Finally, they reached the emergency escape hangar. A small transport shuttle waited, damaged but intact. The soldier looked at her, his face streaked with ash. Get in, I'll fly us out. Saria raised her chin. I will not place my life in the hands of a human. Another explosion shook the hangar, sending fire raining from the ceiling. The soldier met her eyes. Then die here with your pride. Or live and see for yourself what humans are truly made of. Her chest rose and fell. For the first time in her life, Princess Saria stepped into a human's hands, not out of choice but out of survival. The shuttle's engines roared. The hangar door opened, releasing them into the battlefield. Behind them, the great royal cruiser burned, collapsing into the void. Saria sat in silence, her eyes on the man beside her. He was still her enemy, still her prisoner, but something inside her had shifted. He had saved her life twice now, and she could not deny the truth. This human was far from weak. The small shuttle shook as it slipped into the thick clouds of Arcanus, a planet scarred by war. The engines sputtered, smoke trailing behind them, but the soldiers' steady hands kept it under control. Princess Saria sat in the co-pilot seat, her arms crossed, her chin raised high. She wanted to appear calm, but every explosion, every groan of the failing ship made her heart tighten. She had never flown in a craft so small, so fragile. Her royal cruiser had been a fortress. This shuttle felt like a cage falling through fire. The soldier glanced at her, his eyes sharp but calm. "Hold on," he muttered. The shuttle broke through the clouds and descended toward the surface. Below them stretched endless ruins, burned forests, shattered cities, and rivers blackened by ash. Once this land had thrived. Now it was only a battlefield. "Why here?" Saria asked coldly. "Because it's the last place your fleet will look," he said. "They'll search for survivors in the open fields, not in the ruins of a dead world." Saria narrowed her eyes. "You think you can outsmart my people?" He gave a small, humorless smile. "Your people think strength is only in size. Mine know strength is in survival." The shuttle groaned again, shaking violently. Smoke filled the cabin. The soldier slammed a lever forward, and the craft skidded across the broken ground before crashing into the dirt. The impact threw them forward, sparks bursting from the controls. For a long moment there was silence. Only the hiss of cooling metal filled the air. Saria's breath came fast, her hands trembling against the seat. Slowly she turned her head. The soldier was beside her, blood dripping from a fresh cut above his brow, but he was already moving. He unbuckled his restraints and pulled himself to his feet. "Move," he said firmly. "We need to get out before they track us." Her pride resisted the order, but her body obeyed. She followed him out of the wreck, the harsh wind biting at her face. They stumbled into the ruins of an old city. Tall stone towers leaned dangerously, half broken and covered in ash. Windows were shattered, streets cracked with deep scars of war. The smell of smoke and rust lingered in the air. The soldier led her through the rubble, his chains clinking with every step. Even injured, he moved with purpose, scanning every shadow, every corner. Finally, he found what he was searching for, a collapsed building with just enough of a hollow space to hide inside. "This will do," he said, ducking into the dark shelter. Saria hesitated. The floor was covered in dust and broken glass. The air smelled of rot. It was nothing like the clean, shining halls of her palace. "You expect me to stay here?" she asked sharply. The soldier turned, his eyes locking on hers. "Do you want to live? Or do you want to die with dignity?" "Your choice, princess." His words stung, but she said nothing. She stepped inside, lowering her head slightly so her crown wouldn't scrape the broken wall. The soldier sank against a piece of fallen stone, his chest heaving with exhaustion. His chains clinked as he tried to adjust his position. Despite his injuries, he did not complain. Saria sat across from him, her elegant posture still intact. But inside, her mind twisted with questions. She had been taught all her life that humans were weak, selfish, desperate. And yet here he was, bleeding, chained, hunted, and still unbroken. Finally, she spoke. "What is your name?" The soldier looked at her for a moment, then answered. "Kale." "Kale," she repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "You saved me twice, even though you hate me." "Why?" Kale leaned his head back against the stone. "Because hate doesn't win wars. Courage does. And sometimes courage means protecting even the one you should despise." Saria frowned. "You make no sense," he gave a faint smile. "Maybe not to you. But to me it's simple. Every life matters. Even yours." The silence stretched between them. Saria looked away, her jaw tight. She did not want to admit it, but his words stirred something deep inside her. Hours passed. Outside, the sound of distant engines echoed. Ferry patrols were searching the ruins. Saria stiffened, ready to run, but Kale shook his head. "Stay still," he whispered. "They'll pass." She obeyed, her heart racing as shadows moved across the cracked walls. For the first time, she realized she was trusting a human prisoner more than her own soldiers. When the sound faded, she turned back to him. "You risked everything for me. What do you expect in return?" Kale's voice was low but steady. "Nothing. I didn't save you for a reward. I saved you because it was the right thing to do." His honesty cut through her pride like a blade. She had never met anyone, alien or otherwise, who acted without expecting power in return. As night fell over the ruined city, the princess sat in silence, her golden eyes fixed on the scarred soldier. Her mind whispered that he was weak, a fool, an enemy, but her heart whispered something far more dangerous. This human was strong, stronger than she had ever imagined, and she could not stop herself from wondering what else he would show her before the war was done. The ruins of Arcanus were quiet at night. The sky above was a sea of stars, broken by clouds of smoke drifting from distant battlefields. The air was cold, carrying the scent of ash and burned stone. Inside the shelter, the glow of a small fire flickered across cracked walls. Princess Saria sat close to it, her golden eyes watching the flames. Across from her, Kyle sat against a fallen pillar, his chains reflecting faint light. His body was still battered, but his expression remained calm, steady. Hours had passed in silence, but Saria's thoughts were restless. She could not erase the memory of Kale pushing her out of danger, nor his words about sacrifice and courage. Her pride screamed that he was just a human, just an insect pretending to be strong. Yet her heart whispered something different. Finally, she broke the silence. "Why do you keep fighting, Kale? Your people are outnumbered, outgunned. You must know you cannot win this war." Kale's gaze lifted from the fire. His voice was low, steady, almost tired, but unshaken. "Maybe we won't win. Maybe we'll lose every battle, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that we fight. For each other, for our children, for our homes. If we give up, then we've already lost everything." Saria frowned. "Foolish. Sacrifice means nothing if defeat is certain." Kale leaned forward, his eyes burning in the firelight. "Sacrifice means everything. Even if the galaxy thinks humans are weak, we know the truth. We are strong because we refuse to stop. Because we stand together." His words struck her like arrows. She had grown up in a world where strength meant dominance, where the weak were discarded. But Kale spoke of strength as something deeper, something her empire had never valued. She turned away, unwilling to let him see the turmoil in her face. "You speak like a leader," she muttered. Kyle gave a faint smile. "No, I'm just a soldier. A leader doesn't need to be the strongest. They only need to be willing to give everything so others can survive." The princess fell silent. His humility unsettled her. Every Veari noble she had ever known fought only for power. Yet this man, chained and bleeding, spoke of sacrifice without hesitation. A sudden sound broke the moment. Outside, footsteps echoed through the ruins. Harsh voices barked in the Veari tongue. "Patrols." Kyle's eyes sharpened. He motioned for silence, pressing a finger to his lips. Slowly, he rose to his feet despite the chains. His movements were quiet, practiced. Saria's heart pounded. She should have called out, should have alerted the patrol to their prisoner. That was her duty as princess. Yet something held her back. The shadows of soldiers passed across the ruined street. The patrol scanned the rubble with lights, their weapons ready. Kyle crouched low beside Saria, his body instinctively placing itself between her and the danger. Even now, even as her enemy, he shielded her without thought. The patrol lingered for long minutes, then moved on. Their voices faded into the distance. The ruins fell silent once more. Saria exhaled slowly, realizing she had been holding her breath. She turned her gaze to Kale, who still stood tense, listening to the night. "You protected me again," she said quietly. Kale's eyes softened, but his tone remained firm. "It's not about you. It's about doing what's right." Her pride bristled, but she could not deny the warmth that stirred in her chest. She wanted to argue, to call his actions meaningless. Yet the words would not form. Instead, she asked something she never thought she would. "Do you hate me?" Kale looked at her, surprised by the question. "You're my enemy," he admitted. "Your empire has taken countless lives. I've lost friends, brothers, people I swore to protect. But hate? No, hate doesn't bring them back. It only burns the one who carries it." The princess lowered her gaze, her fingers curling in her lap. No one had ever spoken to her this way. Not her generals, not her council, not even her father. To them, she was untouchable, above question. But this human, he saw her flaws, and yet he did not turn away. Hours later, the fire dimmed. Kyle leaned against the stone, his eyes closing from exhaustion. His breath slowed into sleep. Saria, however, remained awake. She studied him in the dim light. The scars across his face, the way his body seemed built not for glory, but for endurance. She thought of how he had saved her, how he had spoken of courage and sacrifice. Her chest tightened with a feeling she could not name. Admiration, respect, or something far more dangerous. For the first time in her life, Princess Saria felt unsure of her own beliefs. The pride she had carried like a shield was beginning to crack, and as she watched the human soldier rest, she wondered if perhaps she had been wrong all along. The ruins of Arcanus were no longer silent. At dawn, the air thundered with engines as Veari warships descended from the sky. Dust rose in violent clouds, shaking the broken towers. The Empire had found them. Princess Saria stood at the shattered entrance of their shelter, her golden eyes fixed on the horizon. Dozens of black-armored soldiers marched through the ruins, their banners snapping in the wind. At the center of the formation, she recognized the silver crest of her father's personal guard. "They're here for me," she whispered. Cale stepped up beside her, chains still dragging at his wrists. His face was grim, but his voice steady. "No, they're here to kill me. You're just a prize they plan to recover." Saria turned to him sharply. "You think they will protect me?" "No. If they discover I released you, if they learn I stood with you, they will see me as a traitor." Cale's gaze locked on hers. "Then you need to run. Take the chance while you can." Her pride wanted to snap back, to remind him she was a princess who never ran from anything. But her heart whispered another truth. She did not want to leave him behind. The ground trembled as the Veari soldiers closed in. Orders rang through the air, weapons glowing with deadly light. Cale clenched his fists against his chains. "Stay behind me. If they reach us, I'll hold them off as long as I can." Saria's eyes widened. "You'll die," maybe, he admitted, his voice calm. "But if my death gives you a chance to live, then it's worth it." The words struck her like a blade. How could this human, wounded and bound, still think only of her survival? She had called his kind weak, but in this moment she saw no weakness at all. Only strength greater than anything she had known. The first wave of Veari soldiers stormed through the ruins. Cale surged forward with a roar, ripping a broken metal bar from the ground. Chains clinked as he swung it like a weapon, striking down 2 guards before they could fire. Blaster shots hissed through the air, sparks exploding against stone. Saria watched in shock as he fought with pure determination, his body moving like a storm despite his wounds. Every strike, every block was meant not to kill but to shield her. He was not just fighting for survival. He was fighting for her. Something inside her snapped. No longer could she stand aside, wrapped in her pride while he bled for her. With a sharp cry, she grabbed a fallen soldier's blade and rushed into the fight. The Veari guards froze in disbelief. Their princess fighting alongside a human? But Saria no longer cared about appearances. She swung the blade with fierce precision, cutting through enemy lines. She and Cale fought back to back, moving as one. Sparks lit the ruins as steel clashed against energy. "Why are you helping me?" Cale shouted between strikes. Saria's voice rang out strong and clear. "Because strength is not power alone. You showed me that. Now I fight with you." The tide of soldiers pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming. But together, princess and soldier carved a path through them, every strike echoing with defiance. A blast suddenly struck Cale's side, sending him crashing to the ground. He groaned, blood soaking through his armor. "Cale!" Saria cried, her heart seizing. She dropped to his side, blocking incoming fire with her blade. Rage unlike any she had ever known burned in her chest. She turned on her father's guards, her voice fierce. "You will not touch him." The soldiers hesitated. Never had they seen their princess fight to protect a human. Confusion spread through their ranks. In that moment, Cale forced himself to his feet, his body trembling. He gripped the broken bar with both hands, standing tall despite his wounds. His voice thundered through the ruins. "You call us weak, but weakness is giving up. Weakness is letting others suffer. As long as one human still stands, we will never be weak." His words echoed like a battle cry, even reaching the soldiers who came to kill him. For the first time, Saria saw doubt in their alien eyes. The battle raged until the last of the guards fell back, retreating into the shadows of their warships. Smoke curled above the ruins and silence returned. Saria dropped her blade, her chest heaving. Cale swayed on his feet, barely standing. She rushed to his side, catching him before he collapsed. "You fool," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "You saved me again. Why do you keep risking your life for me?" Cale gave a faint, tired smile. "Because sometimes the enemy you save becomes the ally you need." Saria's heart pounded. She looked into his eyes, scarred and weary, and knew that something inside her had changed forever. The princess who once saw humans as weak now saw only strength in the man before her. The ruins were silent, but the war was far from over. Still, Saria knew one truth would remain. The brave human soldier had shattered her pride, and perhaps even stolen her heart.